Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. Thanks so much for watching. We are in the early stages of our offseason. Royals had an excellent 99-63 regular season, but we lost in the AL Division Series 3-1. So after two consecutive strong regular seasons with playoff appearances, we have two consecutive quick exits from the playoffs. Thinking ahead to the offseason, should be in good position as far as our job. Goal was to achieve a winning record, and we had the best record in baseball. Looks like we've achieved our profitability goal of 2028 already. One other ownership goal is to reach the World Series next season, so still definitely have some work to do on that front. But we've had a pretty good run so far in the 5 years that we have been GM of the Royals. We'll have a second playoff appearance noted on the record by the end of this season, which is positive. Going to be an interesting offseason. Two big things we are waiting to hear is whether Kyle Lewis will opt into his contract with us. And I guess we're not waiting to hear, but the other big decision we have is whether we extend the team option for starting second baseman Nico Horner. Otherwise, we're not going to have a ton to do. Zack Wheeler suffered a career-ending injury and is going to retire. Picked up Luis Castillo to replace him, and he is going to be a free agent. So one frontline starter will be missing from our rotation. Albert Almora Jr. was just in the minors most of the year, not a big loss there. Same thing with Danny Jansen. So really, basically, we can run back the entire same team as this past season, except we are missing a frontline starter, with Castillo likely to move on as a free agent. So, as always, starting pitcher may be a priority of ours. I tend to think we are going to exercise the $10 million team option for Nico Horner. Had a solid above-average offensive season this year, put up a 3.1 WAR, which is pretty typical for him. He's won 4 consecutive Gold Gloves for us. Perhaps he will win a 5th consecutive one this year when we get into award season. But we've had Horner at second, Lopez at short, Witt Jr. at third, Prado at first, and Melendez at catcher for basically 4.5 full seasons now. The Royals have been very successful. If we can afford it, I think we will bring Nico Horner back. It will probably be his last year with us, although he's a great leader. He'll be 30 years old next year. And we do have the young second baseman, Ricardo Cabrera, will be 22 shortly, number 90 prospect in baseball. We picked him up in the trade with the Yankees for Salvador Perez back 4.5 years ago, when I mentioned when we turned over catching duties to MJ Melendez. He has a similar-ish offensive profile to Nico Horner, maybe potentially a little bit more home run power. Not quite as good defensively, but still looks like he will be a competent second baseman. Decent at stealing bases, decent at sacrifice bunting. Hit 266 in some action in Omaha this year after hitting 287 down in Double-A. Certainly think he may get some action with the Major League club in 2027, but he would certainly be a very cost-effective alternative to take over at second base the season after next for Nico Horner. You can see very similar batting profile, although we do have a little more power with the youngster Cabrera, and then Nico Horner has a somewhat better glove. So that is probably the long-term plan, but right now I'm leaning towards bringing Nico back for a final run with this squad. And, the expectation coming off of a 96-win season followed by a 99-win season is that basically running back a very similar team. We should definitely be a playoff team again in 2027. Obviously, if things don't go our way, we have a lot of injuries, or the team just kind of falls apart, we could certainly look to trade Nico Horner for something at the trade deadline next season also, but hopefully it won't come to that. And as I mentioned, with the loss of Castillo, we're going to have Trevor Rogers, Caleb Longerwell, and Spencer Bauer as our top three starters. And then we've got people like Hayden Wisniewski, Mackenzie Gore, Ricky Vanasco right now to potentially fill those 4 and 5 spots in the rotation. And basically, if we exercise the option on Horner and if Kyle Lewis does opt into his contract, basically the position players are going to be almost exactly the same next season as they were this season. So from that perspective, we've got about $10.5 million heading into potential free agency. Hopefully our budget will get bumped up a little bit again next year, given the strong financial performance we've put together, which means that, we probably will have just about enough money to bring in a pretty good starter. We haven't had great luck with our one-year rentals of Clayton Kershaw and Zack Wheeler, but no reason to not continue trying and hope we get a full season out of somebody. Castillo is certainly an option also. Right now he's looking for $20 million a year for 6 years, which is a little much for the Royals. I think a little much for anybody, given that he'll be 34 years old by the start of next season. But if his price comes down and the number of years he's looking for comes down a bit, he certainly pitched well while he was with us, and would love to have another arm like that back in the rotation next season. But we will see what happens on that front as we get into free agency. And the 2026 playoffs are over. Your St. Louis Cardinals crowned as World Series champions with a 4-3 win over the Red Sox. The Red Sox took out the Angels 4-3. Obviously, they were the team that took us out. And 3 of the top 4 seeds, us, the Astros, and the Brewers, lost in the first round of the playoffs with 3-1 losses in the division series. So unclear exactly how helpful home field advantage was in the playoffs this year, with a couple of wild card teams making it to the World Series. And as the offseason gets underway, not a shock that Kyle Lewis extended his player option, so we are going to be on the hook for about $7 million of his $11.6 million. Final year of the contract for him. Still a solid defensive center fielder, but not much of a bat at this point in his career. But he will be back in center field for us. As I mentioned, we do need an option decision on Nico Horner. I am leaning towards extending him. Nick Anderson, who we picked up in a trade with the Yankees close to the trade deadline, has met his vesting option. The Yankees retained that entire contract, so we basically have him for free next year. Could be an interesting asset to potentially look to deal this offseason. Not sure if he's going to have a huge role in our bullpen next year. Review of season goals. Secretly hoped we'd be a top team, and we did. He's not happy with our profitability, but I thought we made a pretty good year in terms of profitability, especially with the playoff run. He wants us to get to the World Series this coming season. Upgrade at first base. Great, we have one of the upgrade goals. And then also continue to make some money. New budget up to $192 million. So that is actually going to be very helpful. That should, you can see we're going from 180 to 192 million. So that will give us a good amount of flexibility once we get into free agency, hopefully. Here's the interesting one to click. Who is retiring from our team? We don't have any incredibly old players. It's got to be some kind of role player. Oh, no, of course. Obviously, it's not news, but Zack Wheeler's going to retire. Yes. I was trying to figure out what was happening, but we know that Zack Wheeler suffered that career-ending injury at the end of the season. Going to have some minor league players to replace. We also losing a major league staff member, team trainer Nick Kenny. So the controversial Nick Kenny is gone. Will be interesting. We looked to replace him about a season ago when we were having a ton of injuries. looked at who was out there as far as free agent personnel, and there just wasn't anyone that exciting. But now we are going to have to replace him, and you can see we've also lost a few other minor league coaches. So the beginning of the off season is going to be a busy one for these Kansas City Royals. And the options right now for team trainer aren't all that exciting. Typically try to focus most on preventing arm injuries for my rotation. And you can see there's a few legendary and then 4 outstanding coaches out there on that front. But they all have a lot of areas where they are also poor or fair. I mean, I guess Justin Morrow is probably the best overall, but he's only fair at preventing leg injuries, poor at preventing back injuries, decent at rehab, decent at fatigue recovery, so even he's not all that exciting. Looking for someone who just doesn't stink at anything. I guess it's right here, Ken Crenshaw, but he's also not really that great at anything. So I don't know that I'm going to jump at filling the trainer role right now. Obviously, we're going to need one before the end of the season, but maybe hoping when the calendar flips over to the 2027 season after we've got through arbitration and free agent filings, maybe someone else shakes loose at that point who's a little more interesting. But right now, pretty underwhelmed by the options we have to replace Nick Kenny as team trainer. And given the nice increase we're going to have to our budget for next season, we are going to go ahead and extend Nico Horner, exercise that option. $10 million for next year, as I mentioned. Ricardo Cabrera very well may be our starting second baseman for opening day in 2028. But for the 2027 season, going to try to run things back as much as possible with the team that has gotten us to 4 straight winning playoff seasons and 4 straight winning seasons in 2 straight playoff appearances. And Nico Horner has been a big part of that, so going to have him back next year, but it likely will be his final year with the Royals. And as usual, we've got a lot of arbitration decisions to make. Some players getting a little pricey. Hayden Wisniewski, after that first All-Star appearance, his comp is going to increase almost 4 times, from about $1 million to around $4 million. Aaron Ashby also expected to get a big bump to over $4 million. RJ Dabovich and Reese McGuire a little more reasonable. MJ Melendez, getting near the end of his arbitration year, is expected to make close to $8 million, so starting to get expensive at catcher. Jesus Rivera will have an interesting decision to make with him. He is going to be out of option years next season. Picked him up in a trade with Baltimore at the beginning of the year when we sent Bubic over there. Really like him defensively. Not much of a bat, although we think he's probably a little bit better of a bat than Melvin Moreno, who's a very similar player with a nice defensive profile. But don't know that we can be affording to pay close to $2 million to a utility infielder who may not even make the major league roster. So may look to see if we can get anything for Rivera in trade. And then Sal Frelick, who tied for the league lead in steals with teammate Bobby Witt Jr. this year. We will likely be bringing him back, even though he's starting to get expensive. Kind of similar to the guy that we traded him for, Juan Yepez. So we've made 1-year contract offers to Ashby, Dabovich, McGuire, Melendez, and Frelick to hopefully come back to us. I think we are going to also try to offer Wisniewski an offer. Honestly, I could see a scenario developing similar to what happened with Jose Suarez last year, where we get an agreement with him, but with the way the team kind of grows, or with the way that different pitchers are available in free agency, given that Wisniewski probably slots in as our 5th starter right now, that close to $4 million may end up being a little much for him. So I think that it's possible we could look to deal him away, but going to at least make an offer to him now. And then Jesus Rivera, given that we've got one more option here for Melvin Moreno, and we've already got Brooks Lee and Zach DeCenzo as our potential backup utility infielders. Just don't see a huge role on the team for Rivera. He won't have any options left next year, and he's going to be making close to $2 million. So we're going to shop Mr. Rivera around right now and just see if there's much of anything we can get for him. And obviously, if we can find even any player who just has some option years available that's a decent player, may look to go that way. Actually, if Ben Rortvedt has option years available, he could be the answer. It's his last option year also. But we have Melendez and McGuire, who we just made the arbitration offers to, coming back as our starter and our backup catcher most likely. But Danny Jansen, who we had signed to a minor league contract and played in AAA for us, is a free agent, and Shea Langlier is also going to be a free agent this year. So we definitely need kind of a third catcher to play for us in AAA. So if we can find someone who's decent defensively that's got option years left, that would be a good use of Jesus Rivera in a trade. But doesn't look like we're going to find that right now, because Cal Raleigh and Ben Rortvedt were the only catchers offered to us, and they are both also out of option years after this season, so not going to help. And I think we've pieced a trade together with the Blue Jays. In addition to sending them Jesus Rivera, who, again, we really like, a very good defensive utility infielder. We're also going to send them Alexander Vargas, who we picked up about a year ago on waivers from the Padres. Had a little bit of time with Kansas City this year, hitting .282 in 39 at-bats. Not as good defensively as Rivera is, but maybe a little bit better of a bat. The issue with both of them is that they're out of options, so they don't have a ton of value for us, given that we think they're probably going to end up in AAA. So we're going to have to get them through waivers, and if we want to, and don't want to be paying them, especially in the case of Rivera, close to $2 million next season. So we can pick up the reliever Connor Olio. Basically looks like a replacement level major league arm, but he's got 2 option years left. Could even start in a pinch. Wouldn't feel great about it, but he could do it. Fernando Caldera mentioned we needed to kind of get a catcher for AAA. He has played a little bit in AAA back in 2025, spent this past year at AA New Hampshire, but an acceptable defensive catcher with a below average major league bat. But importantly, he's got 3 option years left, so it gives us a little bit of organizational depth at catcher, and we could play him at the major league level if we needed to without embarrassing ourselves, I think. And then we also picked up center fielder Will Taylor. Decent defensively, really good speed, not much of a bat, going to be 24, but he's got 2 option years left. So at least picking up a few players where we've got the options to keep them in AAA going forward for a couple of guys where we're not going to have that option. So we are going to go ahead and make that trade with the Blue Jays. And one other player we're going to shop now is Nick Anderson. Mentioned that we've got the veteran reliever basically for free next year, with the Yankees picking up his contract when they traded him to us. Was fine, a 3.80 ERA, although his FIP minus of 125 was a problem. But we've got a lot of pitching depth right now, although he's great in the clubhouse. If someone's willing to give us something decent for him, we'll consider moving on from him. Obviously, the fact that we can have him for free is interesting, but yeah, there's a lot of interest in Anderson, so we're going to at least take a look and see if there is anyone who's got a longer run with the organization that potentially we can pick up for him. And although there's a lot of options out there to trade for Nick Anderson, nothing really overwhelmed us, and it's a free option at this point, given that we've got him for no dollars for next season. So I think we will go through spring training. If it ends up a situation where he's not going to make the major league roster, I think there's probably, we'll probably be able to get something similar for him, 5 or 6 months from now than we could today. given that it's not costing us anything to keep him at this point. We're going to keep him around for the time being, even though there is potential that we could be moving on from him before the 2027 season actually gets started. So with the trade away of Rivera, we've also now made a one-year offer to Hayden Wisniewski. So hopefully going to get all the arbitration eligible players locked up in the next few days. Don't have any pending free agents who are eligible for compensation. Luis Castillo and Danny Jansen, both of whom I've mentioned, are going to be free agents without compensation. So we're going to spend a little time now just digging into the minor league free agents, see if there's anybody we want to keep around who may have potential to help us at the major league level, or at least has a good personality and is good organizational depth for some of the lower levels of the organization. So we are going to spend a little time with that, but we are not going to make you sit through and watch us make individual decisions on a couple dozen minor leaguers, most of whom will probably never play in the majors. So as we prepare for arbitration, things are going well. We've re-signed Dabovich, MJ Melendez, which fans were pleased with, Reese McGuire, Sal Frelick, which the fans were pleased with, and Aaron Ashby also. So just waiting at this point to hear from Hayden Wisniewski, and then hopefully we will have all of our arbitration eligible players signed. Fan interest is up to 77. While we're thinking about it, going to knock ticket prices back down a notch for next season. We were an average of 18.24, basically sold out for most of the year, so we'll try to go a little higher for next season to generate a little bit more cash for us to work with. Although things have been doing pretty well as far as getting the players signed, having a real tough time signing some of these coaches to lower minor league deals. Not surprisingly, they seem to have some options to either do the role that they prefer or make more money higher in the organization for some other clubs. So still have some work to do on the personnel front. Obviously, team trainer still open. We've got an offer out for manager at single A, but struggling to come up with a hitting coach and a couple of managers at our rookie league complexes in either the ACL or the DRL. So still have some work to do there. We'll take a quick look. I doubt much has changed as far as the trainers who are available in just a week or two, but it's a position that we're going to have to fill eventually. And right now, still not a ton of great prospects out there. I like to try to minimize the number of poor and even fair attributes that my trainers and all coaches in general have, but right now it looks like it may come down to us needing to make a compromise on that before the season starts, but still nobody out there that I'm going to jump at right now. And another pitcher who may be part of our roster in the next couple of years just received the Pitcher of the Year for the International League, Will Goebel, who did come up and pitch 2 games at the Major League level, was not good in those with an 8.44 ERA, but had a 2.71 ERA over 209 innings pitched at AAA for us this year. You can see the profile is looks like an average-ish Major League starter with 3 solid pitches. Extreme fly ball pitcher that doesn't throw that hard, so his average movement probably never going to be great. He is a lefty. He is durable. He was our first round pick with our supplemental pick about a year and a half ago. So a little bit of hardware for Mr. Goebel, and he is certainly going to be in the mix for a back end of the rotation and or long relief roster spot next season, depending on what happens with injuries and what happens with the rest of the moves that we make in terms of additions and departures over the next several months. So Hayden Wisniewski has signed his contract with us, so we've avoided arbitration with everybody. You can see fan interest up to a 79, so making good progress on that front. Also, Gold gloves announced today. Only one gold glove for the Royals. A bit surprising given how great our offense was. And it's a new gold glove winner, Bobby Witt Jr., winning a gold glove for, actually, sorry, it's not a new gold glove winner. He won last year also. So the second gold glove for Bobby Witt Jr. at second base. He's obviously also got the Rookie of the Year and 3 All-Star appearances since joining our team. Nico Horner, for the first time in 5 seasons with us, did not win a Gold Glove this season. As we talked about earlier, though, we did extend him. He's likely playing his final season with us in 2027. In no shock at all that Austin Roberts was named the reliever of the year for the second straight season. Only surprise to me is that he actually only got 18 first place votes, although Colby White did have a nice season for the Blue Jays with a 0.98 ERA in 55 and a third innings, went 8-2 with 7 saves. But Roberts with just another dominant season, although he did have a rough playoffs, unfortunately, but led the league in games, led the league in saves again, in a 2.26 ERA with 95 strikeouts over 71 and 2/3 innings with those 57 saves. Not a shock to see him winning the award. And the awards just keep on coming for the Royals. Byron Nichols, who took over for Mike Matheny, won Manager of the Year. We've signed him to an extension after a 99-win season. And then Trevor Rogers, Cy Young Award. He has been a great addition to our team since we picked him up. Obviously had that injury-plagued 2024 season, but has gotten better each year with us. Went 15-6 with a 2.80 ERA. Led the American League with a 4.6 WAR as a pitcher. So not a shock that Mr. Rogers now has a Cy Young Award to go with his 3 All-Star appearances, including each of the last 2 seasons. And looking at a few other awards, Young Hoo Lee did get a vote for AL Rookie of the Year. It was not from me because I don't vote for these things, but he did get 1 vote for AL Rookie of the Year in his first season. A couple other big awards, NL Cy Young Award to Anderson Polino, 9-11 record, but a 3.52 ERA with 206 strikeouts over 186 and 2/3 innings. 78 FIP minus, and led the league in the National League with a 4.6 pitcher WAR, so I guess that's what got him there. As far as the American League, Vlad Guerrero Jr., who led the league in homers and runs batted in while batting .288, unanimous winner of the MVP award. Bobby Witt Jr., 5th in the voting for our Royals. No one else on the Royals got any votes. And then in the National League, another unanimous MVP, Fernando Tatis Jr., with a monster year. .312 batting average, 54 homers, and 156 runs driven in. So a couple of monster seasons for Fernando Tatis Jr. and Vlad Guerrero Jr. as they win the NL and AL MVP awards, respectively. And we've now made it to the start of free agency. According to the game, Tony Kemp, second baseman, Will Smith, the catcher, Luis Robert, the center fielder, Carson Kelly, another catcher, Nathan Eovaldi, solid starting pitcher, Chris Sale, also a starter, Freddie Peralta, another starting pitcher, Austin Nola, another catcher, and then outfielders Jesse Winker and Cedric Mullins are the top players available as free agents. So there is definitely a little bit of talent out there. Will be interesting to see what we are able to do to potentially pick some of these players up. The frontline starters with Eovaldi, Peralta, Lucas Sims, Alcala, Castillo, Hernandez, and Nate Pearson, as well as Sale. Looks like there's definitely some options out there. Nate Pearson not looking for much money at all. He's technically a reliever, I guess. I'm looking at all pitchers, not just starters, so that makes more sense. if I would search on players that are actually going to be starters, yeah, they're looking for some big money. So we may not be able to bring in our typical one-year starting pitcher rental, at least based on the money that these players are looking for. But there are options out there if we want to supplement our team. You know, we could always make a run at a Max Scherzer, still looking to play at 42 years old, only looking for $2.6 million. Just can't let it go. Bit of an ugly year last year with the Phillies. Gave up 33 home runs in 161 at-bats, 5.98 ERA, went 8-16. He's got 237 wins, so he's not like he's hanging around to even get to 250, much less 300. I guess he just is playing for the love of the game at this point. And looking at the top batters that are going to be available, definitely some options there with some of the players I've mentioned, you know, Mullins, Roberts, Will Smith, Jonathan India, Tony Kemp, Jesse Winker. There are some solid offensive players available, so have some things to think about. You know, Will Smith is a catcher, certainly a nice bat. Not awesome defensively, but he's also looking for about $35 million a year, so will not be the direction that these Royals are headed, unfortunately. And our old friend Anthony Rendon is a free agent now, and he's still looking for big bucks. 36 years old, fragile, still looking for 17+ million a year. He did kind of have a good bounce-back season with the Marlins last year after we traded him away. He was relatively healthy. 17 homers, 259 batting average, good for a 114 OPS plus and a 110 WRC plus. Finally kind of put up some of the offensive numbers that we had kind of hoped to see from him in that couple months that he was on our team a couple years ago. So it's going to be an interesting free agent period coming up for the Royals. You can see we've got about $9 million for free agents, but not a lot of money for extensions. So, we're going to have to be looking for probably a one-year deal unless we decide to trade away some of our own players and or cut our scouting or development budgets. So we can free up a little bit if we cut our draft budget down to $8 million. Again, we're picking so late that we're not expected to need a lot for draft slot amounts, so that helps a little bit on the margins with the financial situation for this team. Opens us up to about $11 million. The salary situation is going to be interesting. I mentioned that, Hayden Wisniewski, who we ended up signing for $3.8 million, that could be a guy that we look to trade to open up a little bit of money. But I think the issue is right now with the starting pitchers that are out there, they're all looking for so much more money than even the $11 million we have, plus another $4 million from Wisniewski, that I just don't think we're going to be able to get anything done. Could potentially look to trade Nick Pratto. He's also making $4 million. He would be a logical one to think about moving on from. Has been a competent offensive player for us over the years. He's a acceptable defensive first baseman. Just hasn't really hit as well as we hoped. We do have a bit of a front-loaded contract that we signed him to, so the next 3 years are pretty manageable at $4 million this upcoming season, followed by $3 million for each of those next 3 years. That being said, ownership does want us to upgrade at first base from Pratto, so he would be a player that we could consider moving on from. So we could free up $4 million if we traded Wisniewski, another $4 million if we traded Pratto, and then the last potential option that I guess we could think about would be trading Kyle Lewis in this final year of his contract as center field. We could sign Young-Hoo Lee into slide Young-Hoo Lee into center field. Would not be an optimal solution, but I think he could play at least a credible center field out there for us if we decide to move on from Lewis. Obviously, if we traded away Lewis, Pratto, and Wisniewski, then that frees up $15 million for us. And with the 11 we have, then with $26 million, we could be much more aggressive in free agency and potentially even go after a Cedric Mullins in center field. A bit more range and a better error factor than Lee if we have him out there, as well as with a pretty productive bat. Has hit over 20 homers the last several seasons. OPS plus is 122 to 144. Question is, he's 32 years old, and just how long he's looking for in terms of a contract. Yeah, he's looking for $26 million a year average for 6 seasons. So would certainly be a great bat to bring on. He's a 4-time All-Star in center field, and he's also won a couple of Silver Sluggers. Would definitely be a big upgrade offensively from Lewis. Defensively, he would be better than Lee, who's our better option. The issue is that we would just need to get rid of all 3 of those players, Lewis, Prado, and Wesneski, to bring him on board. It would end up being an upgrade at center field compared to Lewis. Wisniewski would definitely be a loss coming off of that All-Star season, but I think we do have other pitchers who could kind of fit that 5th starter, swing starter, long reliever role for us in a more cost-effective manner. So that may be an option. And then Prado I like, but we could absolutely slide Zach DeCenzo in as our starting first baseman. He's even a little bit better defensively than Prado. He's 6'4", so he's probably got better range, and has had a 84 OPS plus his first year with us, a 110 OPS plus this past season as a 26-year-old. Pretty similar batting profile to Prado, maybe even has a little more power, although he probably strikes out more. So that is what we will be thinking about as we get prepared for our next episode. Do we maybe deal away a few players to open up some more money and try to make a run at a bigger time player for these win now Royals? Mullins is going to be a tricky one for us just because we barely get to the money we need for 1 year if we let all those guys go, and then we've still got the issue of not having a ton of money for extensions, so we'll have to be creative with how we would structure a potential deal to him. But the other option is if we trade away those players and just move Young Hoo Lee into center field, then that does give us the opportunity to potentially bring a Luis Castillo back, and Castillo would be a big upgrade from a Wisniewski in the rotation. So there are options for us to think about as we head into free agency, but we will be focused on those in our next episode. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.